So hi all, so here with Bill today. So Bill, thanks a million for joining us. I suppose we're in the middle of July just talking about animal health, and we have a bunch of calves here, and just to speak about the calves, I suppose you were just saying there to me maybe just before we started about weighing calves this time of year, which wouldn't be very common, but maybe what's your thoughts around it?
Yeah, thanks Pat. It's a lovely bunch of calves, and in fairness a very even bunch of calves. And I suppose, look, July, August, always a key time to go through calves and just have a good look at them. Ideally, they should have been doing sort of 700 grams since they went out to now. Now, the days are getting short. You can hear it under the ground. Grass is getting a little bit wet.
Yeah.
So, you know, the rumens are still developing. So, to give the lighter ones every chance, like
Yes.
go through them, anything that's sort of below what you'd expect them to be, pull them off to a separate group. If you have plenty of grass, just give them that little pre-movement ahead and let others clean up after them, or introduce a little bit of meal.
Meal as well, yeah.
And again, just check them again. So this is the key marker really, to whatever we're probably looking at them to be 30% of their mature weight.
Mature weight, yes.
Like sort of they're going into the house, so they should be halfway to that now, or maybe a little bit with it. And anything that's behind it, get a little bit of a push, because the food conversion efficiency is at its best really this stage for every kilo dry matter.
And as you say, go in time.
Get in
time.
Yeah,
no point
don't
looking
be
at them.
exactly. No point trying to chase them in November and you're trying to
get ready for breeding, whichever will come around fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Few farmers having issues with calf scour. I suppose, what would you put that down to? What are you hearing on the ground there?
I suppose, look, there's no scientific really, Pat, on what's causing this, what's commonly known now as summer scour syndrome. But I suppose there's a couple of things that sort of run between groups. I've been doing a bit of work down the background with a couple of vets for the past couple of years, and I suppose fibre is definitely number one. Calves are selective grazers, so they'll actually pick off. So if you're grazing high covers, they'll take the leaf and they leave the rest behind them, and then they're not great to go back down, to graze it down. So fibre is very important for the rumen mat and get them going. So that seems to be one that seems to be going. And again, I suppose this year, why we think it isn't as, generally it always appeared in the younger calves, the later weaned calves tend to show the symptoms first in other years. And this year they tend to, because grass was tight, they stayed in probably a little bit longer, and in a lot of cases then they went off in a group of their own.
Yes.
And then if you look at that, those haven't shown the same level of symptoms as other years, and if you look at it then is that they've probably got a little bit more meal for longer.
Okay.
This year than normal.
Yeah.
The second thing is grass quality. You know, it has been hard to keep it right this year.
Yeah.
You know, it has been just a little bit stressed. There's a little bit more fibre in grass this year than there has been other years. And then a lot of farmers started introducing little IBCs with holes in them with straw and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For that sort of May, June sort of period. And that has really they seem to have made a difference.
Made a difference in it, okay.
And I suppose the other thing that has become aware of is that, you know, with dosing, you know, with all the pressures around that and more sustainability and stuff like that, probably had taken our eye a little bit off of that. So again, I'd say farmers use the testing scheme a little bit better this year. Tested earlier for coccidiosis, for coccidian parasites and stuff like that. And if they needed, like if the threat was high, they seem to get in and treat fairly quick.
Okay.
And even though in the case of coccidiosis, fellas might have treated inside in the shed.
Yeah.
And traditionally wouldn't have treated.
Yes.
And this year, when it came back high in the test-up, they were recommended to treat again.
Okay.
Those little things seem to have made a difference in it.
I would say, look, there's no issues here on this farm, but there's no meal being fed to these calves here at the moment. Yeah. Should farmers be still feeding meal? Would you recommend? Obviously, nobody wants that. There's a cost in it.
Nobody wants that.
But maybe what would be your thoughts around that? Should they be getting a small?
I suppose, look, rumen development is the key, and it's the change really is the big one. So literally, I'm assuming that these have been gradually weaned when they came to grass. They were introduced early, milk, meal, grass, and then the milk went first, meal went second, and now they're down to grass. What I like about this is that the grazing height.
Yeah.
You know, it's really like what you can see here when they're grazing it out. When they're grazing it, they're literally going down, so they're getting their mix of their leaf.
Yes.
And their bit of stem inside it at the same time.
Yeah, they're not going into big heavy cover.
They're not going in where they're just picking the little tops.
The
nice stuff and not getting a bit of fibre. And you can actually see it in them. The left hand side here, that little triangle in front of their hip bone.
Yeah.
Like, it's if they weren't getting enough fibre, that's where the rumen is. That's what the rumen is developing.
Yes.
And like if you look at all the calves here, they're all nice and rounded.
Yeah.
So that short rib does a nice round. So that means the rumen is nice and full.
Yes.
So that's a really good point to look for. If you're looking at calves, if they're a little bit empty, can't see any calf.
No, they look quite
really
full there, to be fair.
Here,
Yeah.
probably that black calf is probably the one.
Yes.
You know, you can just see the small little triangle beginning to show.
Yeah.
But all the rest of them are nice and full. But if you go in, you see that you can see that short
That
rib
triangle
showing
there,
nicely. Well, then look, do you need to put in a bit of fibre first, and then do you need to do a bit of supplementation afterwards, or do you just want to look at your grass covers, move them a little bit earlier?
Yes.
You know, I suppose most of us sort of got into calves, particularly now the weather getting wet. Do you know, if they dirty grass, they're like children. They don't go back, do you know, to clean it out.
Yeah.
So look, maybe give them sort of, well, ideally 36-hour breaks, but there's nobody probably going to do that. But definitely look at moving them probably twice a week, and ideally 3 times a week.
Yes.
Do you know, so that you have nice clean grass coming to them afterwards.
Yeah.
Look, if you have to mop it up with the older stock coming behind.
Yeah, coming on. So be it.
So be it. And I suppose the other thing, particularly with calves, is, and we sort of forget about calves. Calves have a lot in common with sheep, right?
Okay.
Because the rumen, like young lambs, are being weaned off at this time of the year. The rumens are only being developed, right? And what you're trying to do there is the microflora, the bacteria that drives the whole gut and drives their immunity, that's really still developing. And there's a link there in nutrition between fibre, cobalt, sugar and protein. And what you need to do there is that if they're lacking in particularly cobalt, and we can see from the maps of Ireland that cobalt is deficient in a lot of the country, but it also follows the grass growth curve. So when the grass growth curve gets that mid-season dip, the cobalt ability drops down as well.
Yes.
And as it rises then sort of late August, September, it tends to come back up again.
Yeah.
So what the sheep boys will generally do, if you're in sheep country, they'll generally supplement with cobalt sort of July, August, September.
Yes.
And what we're finding is that calves actually as well are sort of giving more or less the same responses if you're weighing. There's that sort of 100 to 200 grams of a difference between a calf that's supplemented with cobalt and isn't. And again, watch your fibre.
Yeah.
Because the fibre generates, the fibre and the cobalt mixes together to generate the B vitamins that drives the natural flora of the gut and drives that rumen development. So to really get them set up for the autumn and get them going forward, like, you know.
So yeah, you're saying cobalt is key at this time of year, Bill, but I suppose these calves aren't being fed meal. What's the easiest way of getting the cobalt to the calf?
Well, sure, like there's probably 3 or 4 different ways of doing it, right? I suppose if you're not feeding meal, well then that's option 1 gone out the gap.
Yeah.
Option 2 then is buckets or something sort of what we call free access.
Yeah.
Now look, again, if you put something free access into these fellas, it's like throwing in a packet of sweets in amongst the kids. You'll have a mess in, and then you'll open yourself up to parasite potentially and grass waste and stuff like that. Your other options then, what the sheep boys would do is they either dose every 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
So liquid drenched down the throat.
Yeah.
Or what they do,
Every 3 to 4 weeks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or then what you can do is they'd say, look, we'll take it 4 months or 5, get something to treat for 4 or 5 months. A bolus in that case,
yeah.
probably, yeah.
So yeah, okay. Very good. Yeah.
It's probably the easiest way.
Easiest way
to
of
get
doing
in,
it, yeah.
particularly if you're dealing with big numbers and labour is.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're
yeah,
not
yeah.
feeding calves, like if you're maximising grass, which is the right thing to do at this stage.
Yeah.
Because you want to develop that rumen.
Yeah, for the
some
season
sort
ahead.
of oral supplementation is probably the easiest way to do it.
Okay, very good. So yeah, Bill, we're just walking down the track here, I suppose, this time of year now, middle of July. A bit of lameness creeping in, I suppose. Weather has been variable. Any recommendations there for farmers, maybe, of what they could be using or to help with that?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing really there is just the track quality itself.
Yeah.
Good bit of rain coming, bits of wash off and stuff like that. Just if there's sharp stones or bits of potholes and stuff where dirt can be gathering, that's the most obvious one to start with. Get those tidied up first before the weather really changes.
Yes.
I suppose again we can see it here in the pastures. I would say there's a real lush growth coming.
Yeah.
The nights are cooling down a little bit, so we're finding the sugar levels in grass are probably dropping a small bit as well.
Yes.
Protein levels are really yanking up again, and fibre levels are low. So
Yeah.
we're running a small bit of subclinical acidosis and stuff there as well. A little bit of variation in that. So that just puts a little bit of softness into the hoof as well.
Yes.
And then we know as well that you know, grass is growing fairly rapidly this time of year. If we look at the grass curve, it sort of dips as well. And if we know from mineral analysis this time of year that minerals tend to drop a bit as well.
Yeah.
So particularly zinc. So if you have a sort of history of a farm with zinc, might be a good time to supplement a bit of
Supplement a bit of zinc in, okay.
bit of zinc into just to harden up the hoofs.
Very
Again,
good.
Your foot batting and stuff comes into place.
Yeah.
So get in ahead of it. Don't
Get in
be,
it, you're right.
Don't
Yeah,
be
yeah,
behind
yeah.
it. Do you know, if you think if you had a problem last year, chances are
Get in
you'll have a
again.
problem,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and a lot of people forget the foot bat this time of year as well.
Yes.
And
Yeah, no, very good. And I suppose maybe mastitis is creeping up a small bit. You can see in a few farms we've been with there now, cell counts are just rising that small bit. Is that due to the environment again, or the weather, the change in weather that we're after having, do you think?
yeah, I suppose a little bit. I suppose, you know, we see it in more part of the last day as well. You know, we're beginning to understand a little bit more about stress and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
you know, cows are probably walking longer this time of the year as well. They're probably standing around a little bit longer as well
Yeah.
on the walks and stuff like that. So their immunity is probably under a little bit of pressure as well.
Okay.
And heat stress, we can't rule it out. We don't get a lot of it.
Yes.
But like temperatures are variation. It isn't if we're like ourselves. It's nice cool. We don't have much notice, but
Yeah.
hot days we notice a bit more. So pushes down the immunity.
Okay.
And then again, just the basics again. You know.
Yeah.
Look, is there history? Is it the old culprits like?
Yes,
You
you're
know,
going through
had
it
she a
again.
problem earlier on the time?
Yeah.
You know, a bit more selective dry cow.
Yeah.
Like, you know, go have a look back if she's giving you trouble now. Was there somatic, you know, on that first milk recording?
Yes.
Was it a little bit above what you would like it to be?
Yeah, and the old culprits again, as you said.
Yeah, and just have a check on those ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just try and minimise the stress as much as you can and deal with, you know, now is the time to deal with somatic cell counts or to deal with mastitis. You know, particularly
Yeah.
with more selective dry cow coming.
Yes.
It's growing year on year, so you need to start to get on top of that now because, you know, if you don't,
Run into problems into the year.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
look, we're trying to reduce down the amount of antibiotics we're using
Okay.
from a sustainability point of view as well.
Yes. And I suppose a few cases I've heard of as well, Bill, now, which is unlike, there may be strange for this time of year, milk fever. There's a bit of that happening on farms still.
Yeah, and I suppose it's the changing environment we're coming into, Pat.
Yeah.
Like Lyman, the grant came in, the subsidy came in this year on it. A good bit of lime went out in the springtime. We're recycling more slurry.
Yeah.
Slurries tend to be higher in potassium as well. Potassium tends to lock up magnesium. So there's that three-way bond between magnesium and calcium
Yes.
in the cow system. And if the potassium levels are a little bit high, I actually see a case 3 weeks ago, rumination and collars dropped across a herd
Okay.
over the space of sort of 12 hours.
Yeah.
We couldn't figure out what it was. And 24 hours later, next thing is the rumination started to pick up. So I just rang the farmer and said to him, I said, what happened there? He said, I don't know. I said, what's the change? And what we discovered afterwards was that there was a mistake made on the slurry going out. So he was trailing shoulder slurry out and went out at 4 times. Different operator on the tank. So we took a sample off the grass that was coming back up, potassium through the roof.
Okay.
And he had 2 or 3 cases of suspected milk fever, stroke, tetany. Nervous cows down in milk.
Yes.
Little things you couldn't put a hand on.
Okay. And is it the time of year to be preventing that again, or is it just watch what the cows are going into at this time of year?
Yeah, a little thing is just watch what the cows are going into, and again, soft lush grass, cold nights, magnesium absorption through the plant is generally a little bit low.
Okay.
So again, watch it.
Watch that.
Just watch your calcium, magnesium supplementation. Particularly, look, ration prices aren't coming back where we'd like to be.
No.
Everybody's probably trying to look. We've fed a little bit more than what we'd like so far.
Yes.
So again, just maybe supplement a small bit of the relatively cheap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a cow to pay for a lot of it.
Yeah, it does. 100%. Yeah. A lot of guys were pulling meal maybe and dropping it to almost zero, if they could, and obviously with the economics of it makes sense. What are the key minerals, I suppose, that still need to be ensured are in the diet if the meal is being pulled?
I suppose that, and this really comes into some of those issues we're talking about, milk fever and grass tetany there earlier.
Yeah.
Like most of those will be set for a feeding rate probably minimum 2 kilos.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, if you buy a standard off the shelf, could be 4 kilos.
Okay.
To get sort of the minimum requirement that the cow needs.
Yeah.
So again, if you're pulling the feeding rate, either talk to your nutritionist or your rep or whoever it is, or basically just have a look at the docket, see what the feeding rate is in.
Yes.
And look, if you have problems then like that with a subclinical, with a milk fever technique,
Yeah.
talk to somebody, get some bit of supplementation into them.
Yes.
It's relatively cheap. And again, look, with the lime, and as we touched on, lime is going to free up molybdenum, particularly on the heavier type of soils and stuff like that. You could potentially get a little bit of a copper problem if we do a heavy liming in the back end of the year.
Okay.
Could free up molybdenum. That could affect copper. That look, fertility, growth rates in calves and stuff like that.
Yes.
So just be aware of the couple of things, the couple of little changes you're making.
Yeah.
I suppose the other thing there is that with fertilizer prices and stuff like that as well, sulphur levels have gone up a good bit.
Okay.
Fertilizers and application rates have gone up in the past couple of years, and what we're finding now is that farmers that traditionally didn't have problems with selenium deficiency is tending to show little bits of selenium, and that's linked into iodine. So again, if you're doing those couple of changes, talk to somebody, your vet or your nutritionist, somebody, just to know, maybe take a forage sample or milk sample or something, just to get a handle to see what sort of changes are going on there.
Yes.
Particularly if the meal levels are coming down.
Yes, and as I suppose yields are dropping now, maybe as we spoke about the cell count, what are your recommendations, I suppose, to be ensuring that you're doing if you do see a spike in the cell count from the bulk tank?
Well, I suppose, again, what we touched on earlier, right, pick out your problem ladies first, get them treated. The other thing is liner changes. You know, economics are a little bit tight this year.
Yeah.
We might try to get the extra 20, 30 milkins out of them. We all know the same. Look, it's critical this time of the year. If they need to be changed, change them.
Okay.
And then, look, dipping.
Yeah.
It's holiday time. There's probably a couple of different milkers coming in.
Yes.
Make sure that the T-tip is topped up, that the sprayers are working properly, particularly for the post dipping. And then look, if you have a problem and it's increasing from milk corn to milk corn for the past couple of months, well then do you not start to look at some of the optional extras, pre-dipping.
Pre-dipping,
cluster flush.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Yeah, as holiday season there now, it is a different routine and different people coming into the parlour, and make sure everything is there and available for the relief milker.
And particularly gloves,
Yes.
Like fellas like us, big hands.
Yeah.
There might be a teenager coming in, smaller hands, gloves won't fit. Little things like that.
Yeah.
Just have that extra
box
a small pair of gloves.
Yeah.
Reduce the risk of transfer from one to the other.
Yeah. So Bill, so we're staying at this side of the wire. I suppose we're in the middle of July. We can hear a man in the background not too happy. He'll hopefully be out soon. So what we have hopefully in calf heifers here, they look well on weight. I suppose, Bill, what are the key things to be looking at here?
Again, I suppose a little bit like the calves, left hand side, watch rumen fill. Again, they're probably embryos growing inside them now. The boy is unhappy below, so most of them probably are in calf. So that embryo now is really beginning to grow. So that'll take a lot of energy to keep it down, to keep it growing. And the other thing then is we need to have these sort of minimum 60% mature body weight. Yeah. Look, they say by housing, I start to say, keep moving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We want them up to 90% at calving.
Yeah.
So every little step we can make now, grass is the cheapest way to do it. So keep them well fed, keep them moved, and again, that's sort of 1200 cover, just the bite size, get it cleaned out, and we can see below, absolutely perfect. So they're doing very, very well.
Okay. This group here, as we can hear the sound out of them, what would you recommend there for if someone thought there was a bit of a cough coming in the group?
I suppose just watch coughs like that, particularly this time of the year. Like if you have a vaccination program, just make sure that it's up to date, for your viral pneumonias and stuff like that. The other thing is we're after having a real good dry summer. Very little rainfall, high temperatures. So the likes of your stomach worms and your lungworm have basically been dormant all along. Moisture contents now are nice with real nice temperatures as well, at 14, 15 degrees moisture temperature. They love it. So like if you haven't dosed already for whoos in particular, stomach worms, particularly whoos, if you hear a cough coming, when you get them up, if you hear that cough moving, if it's more than sort of 10-15% of the herd, probably a chance is that just dose, because they lose their immunity. If they haven't been exposed to the larva, Del3 and Del4, for sort of 4 months, their natural immunity dips.
Okay.
So it could well be, that their heifers, they were covered last year, you'd expect, but they mightn't have been exposed really at any level this year.
Yeah.
And that could be a threat now at the moment.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we better move on here. There's a man getting angry at us. Bill, thanks a million for that today.
Look.
And I suppose any of the boluses or anything there you can see, we'll have a link here on our website. And thanks for watching.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for having us. Great to see such nice stock.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.